afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be here to support the launch of Tetsu's book, Uprooted Again, Japanese Canadians Moved to Japan After World War II. I have known Tetsu for over 15 years, and over these years, I have the pleasure to become friends with many Japanese Canadians through Tetsu. Upholding the principle of human rights for all, Tetsu was not only involved in the redress movement for Japanese Canadians internment. He has been working with our organization, Bc Alpha, Association for Learning and Preserving the History of World War II in Asia, on many projects to promote the Asian Holocaust education, as well as on the redress movement for victims of atrocities committed by the Imperial Japanese forces before and during World War II. I was especially struck when I read the comments by one of the exiles, Yoshiaki Nakagawa. I would like to quote from the book here. He commented that redress would mean very little materially to those who had lost houses and their land, but on hearing a formal apology from the representative of the Canadian government, concluded, "My feelings are at rest now," unquote. The quest for redress is so universal and in unison for all victims of human rights violation. The voice of a Dutch child slave labor survivor of Japanese concentration camp in the Dutch East Indies immediately came to me. He said, "I have been constantly suffering from nightmare and won't have inner peace unless the Japanese government apologizes for the war crimes committed." I can never forget how one survivor of the Nanking massacre said, "She will 死不瞑目," meaning my eyes will not close even on the day I die. Because she said, as the Nanking massacre has always been denied by the Japanese officials and politicians. The Japanese Canadians who are interned are definitely victims of the Canadian racist policy. In fact, they are also victims of the Japanese militarism, which led to the waging of the 14 years of war in the Asia-Pacific. This war lends a convenient excuse to the Canadian government to legislate the internment policy based on racism. After long and hard struggle, and with the rightful support from many other ethnic communities, our fellow Japanese Canadians finally received a well-deserved redress agreement from the Canadian government in 1988. What does this redress agreement mean? I remember many years back when our organization asked the National Association of Japanese Canadians to co-sign the letter in support of the redress for the Asian Holocaust survivors and victims. The then president of the National Association Japanese Canadians, Mr. Rennie Enomoto, wrote the following in a bulletin published by the Japanese Canadian Citizens Association. I quote, "The Nikkei legacy is that the redress agreement obliges Japanese Canadians to adopt a higher order of behavior. It requires us to see that rights are not Chinese Canadians' rights or Jewish Canadians' rights. They are human rights, and human rights transcends ancestral and cultural affiliation and economic self-interest," unquote. In the last sentence of his book, Tetsu wrote, and I quote, "Its aim," meaning the book's aim, "is to present the exile of 1946 not as a trivial incident, nor as a closed chapter in the history of this country, but as a source of inspiration for the relentless struggle to ensure access to human rights for all," unquote. I would like to resonate with Tetsu's hope and hereby appeal to the Japanese Canadian community to continue adopting a higher order of behavior and to follow the footsteps of Tetsu in supporting the quest for redress from the Japanese government for the victims of the Asian Holocaust. Tetsu, thank you for inspiring us with this book of oral history. I wish you good health and look forward to working with you and friends from the Japanese community on many more projects related to human rights and justice in the years to come. Thank you.